Hey, what's up guys, it's DarkArmedDuelist, and today we're going to be doing a Skull Servant deck profile. So this is a really fun deck that plays everybody's favorite friendly skeleton that waves to everybody that passes by, and that turns into an amazing, like, 10k to 13k, like, beat stick that can OTK your opponent in the blink of an eye. This deck is really insane and really fun to play around with, and relatively budget nowadays, and just an overall fun deck to play around with one of the weakest cards ever created in the entire game of Yu-Gi-Oh! It's just really fun to OTK your opponent with the King of the Skull Servant. So, without further ado guys, don't forget to like, comment, subscribe, hit the bell there so you can become part of the notification squad, and definitely check out the Patreon down in the description below because we have some awesome rewards for you guys, like getting your name in the description of every single video, to get signed cards in the mail, or even getting requested deck profile every single month that you're a patron, along with test hands. So, without further ado guys, let's get straight on into this. So first off, we're going to be playing 3 copies of the friendly skeleton himself, Skull Servant. A skeletal ghoul that isn't strong, but can mean trouble in large numbers. I've said it since just about every time I've done this deck profile. It's amazing to me that they took his flavor text and, like, amplified his effect by like 10 in the form of this card, which is King of the Skull Servants, because his text reads that he can mean trouble in numbers, and the more you have in the graveyard, the more attack he has. And I don't know if they planned this from the very beginning or what, but this card is insanely good. What this card does is the original attack of this card becomes the equal number of King of the Skull Servants and Skull Servant cards in your graveyard times 1,000. Now, that might not seem like a lot, but when you put, like, I don't know, 15 Skull Servants in the graveyard in this deck, it becomes a problem. This card is really good. And it also has the ability that if this card is destroyed by battle, you can remove from play one other King of the Skull Servant or a Skull Servant in your graveyard and special summon this back to the field. So it just comes right back at 1,000 less attack points, which is fine. But I don't know who's going to beat this in battle. We then play 3 copies of White Prince. White Prince is really good because what this card does, if it's sent to the graveyard, you get to send a Skull Servant and a Lady in Right from your deck to the graveyard. And then if you do, you can also banish 2 Skull Servants and this card from your graveyard to special summon a King of the Skull Servant from your deck. And this card's name is always treated as Skull Servant while in the graveyard. All of your Skull Servant or white cards always are treated as Skull Servants while they're in the graveyard. We then play 3 copies of White Mare. White Mare is really, really, really good. This card is like one of the better cards in the entire deck. It's pretty bonkers what it does. What it does is while this card's in the graveyard, if this card's name is treated as Skull Servant, and you can discard this card to activate one of the following effects. You either select one of your remove from play Skull Servants or White Mares and return it to the graveyard, or select one of your remove from play Lady in White or King of the Skull Servants and you special summon it back to your side of the field. So if this does get destroyed by battle and you banish a Skull Servant or King of the Skull Servant, you can just use White Mare, discard it, and bring it back to your side of the field. I mean, it's that easy. We then play 3 copies of White Princess. White Princess is kind of like the worst one of them all, in my opinion, because she's not quite as good as any of the other ones, because what she does is this card's name becomes Skull Servant while on the field or in the graveyard, and if this card is normal or special summon, then you can send a White Prince from your deck to the graveyard. And then during either player's turn, you can send this card from your hand or field to the graveyard, and all monsters on the field lose attack equal to attack and defense equal to their own rank times 300 until the end phase, which is good because she sends White Prince from the deck to the graveyard, but she's easily ashed, which is the only downside of this card, which is really bad. But at the same time, this card's really good because you do get to send White Prince from deck to graveyard. So it's a good card overall, but it's kind of awkward because she's level 3, and she's the only Skull Servant that's ever been level 3, so she's good and bad at the same time, but she's needed. We then play 3 copies of the Lady in Right. Well, Lady in Right's at level 3 too, so I guess you can say that. But she counts as a Skull Servant while she's in the graveyard. And face-up level 3 or lower zombie monsters you control, except Lady in Right, cannot be destroyed by battle, and are unaffected by the effect of spells and trap cards as well, which is really good. That she just protects all of the Skull Servants while they're in the graveyard or while they're on the field. And she's probably one of the creepiest looking cards I have ever seen in Yu-Gi-Oh! Ever. We then play 2 copies of Jacobolin. Jacobolin is really good because he lets you discard a zombie monster to special summon this card from your hand, and then during your opponent's main phase, you can target a zombie monster in your graveyard, special summon that monster, but banish it when it leaves the field, and then you banish this card face up until the end phase. So it's kind of like a walking Monster Reborn, constant Monster Reborn, which is really good when I played it too. And plus it lets you ditch Skull Servants from your hand to be able to special summon it, and it's good link material as well. We then play 2 copies of Mizuki. Mizuki is really good because it can revive any zombie from the graveyard by banishing itself. 3 copies of Unizombie. This card is really good and is how you get into every single synchro monster in this entire deck. And it's just an overall amazing card. It's a generic zombie. It's probably one of the best. It is actually, I'm going to go ahead and say it. It's the best generic zombie card in the entire game. It lets you Foolish Burial any zombie monster from your deck to the graveyard and increase its level by 1. And it also lets you send any zombie monster from your hand to the graveyard and then increase this card's level by 1, essentially. We then play 2 copies of Shiranui Solitaire because you can special summon out the copy of Unizombie from your deck by tributing this card. And then we play 3 copies of Ash Blossom to round out the monster lineup. The Ash Blossoms help out a lot in this deck because they help out just stopping your opponent while you're trying to go in for your plays. This card's really pivotal to play in the deck. The only thing I've kind of considered dropping this for is 3 copies of Dark Ruler No More, because the Dark Ruler No More will totally shut down an opponent's field. It doesn't matter at that point what they establish. You just Dark Ruler No More them. They can't negate it. It's a speed spell 4, and then it just totally shuts down their field. So I've kind of considered putting that in, or consider putting in 3 Nibirus. So those are 3 options for you guys. If you don't have the Ash, you can put in Dark Ruler No More. If you don't have Dark Ruler No More or Ash, you can put in 3 Nibiru. And if you don't have any of it, then I don't know what to tell you. So that's it for the monsters, guys. Let's get into the spells. So for the spells, we are going to be playing a single copy of Card Destruction. Card Destruction is really important in this deck because Card Destruction helps you discard all your Skull Servants from your hand to the graveyard to be able to use their effects like your copy of White Prince and all your different cards that you have to be able to trigger their effects and be able to boost up your King of the Skull Servant as much as possible. You usually want to go first, and you usually want to go second, but this card's really good to be able to ditch your hand. It's not so good to help fix your opponent's hand, but it's really good to fix your hand. We then play a single copy of Called by the Grave. Called by the Grave is really good just to negate cards on the field, like your copy of like any hand trap that you just don't want to deal with. 1 copy of 1 for 1 because you want to be able to special summon King of the Skull Servant from the deck as quickly as possible. Foolish Burial because it helps you send White Prince from deck to graveyard, which then in turn sends a copy of Lady in Right and a Skull Servant from your deck to the graveyard. 1 copy of Burial from a Different Dimension. I really kind of want to play this at 2, but at the same time, I feel like it's fine as a 1-of in the deck, especially with the different build that I have. I feel like it's fine, but it's really a good 1-of because it helps you boost up your Skull Servant by like 3,000, and plus you have the copy of, what's his name? Oh my goodness, what's his name? Whitemare. You have Whitemare in the deck too. Whitemare helps out a lot because it's just overall a really good card, but Whitemare brings stuff back anyway, so this is just kind of backup plan. Perform About Popper Up is a good card because it helps you send 3 cards from your hand to the graveyard, and then you draw cards equal to the number you send, but you do take 1,000 points for every card that you send to the graveyard because you don't play any Perform Pals in this deck at all. And then we play 3 copies of Allure of Darkness. As you can tell, we're trying to dig for our copy of King of the Skull Servant as quickly as possible, and to ditch cards out of our hand to be able to draw out of the deck exactly what we need so we can OTK our opponent. So that's it for the main deck, guys. Let's get into the extra deck. So for the extra deck, we are going to be playing a single copy of Beals. Beals is really good in and out to a lot of cards, especially Dragoons, because they can't pop it, they can't negate it, they just essentially goes like in against them with this card. Like, it's really, really, really good. And just as an overall amazing card to summon against your opponent. All the synchro monsters you're going to be summoning off of Unizombie and level manipulating Unizombie to get them to the right level to summon out your particular synchro monster. Trishula is really, really easy to summon in this deck because if you summon out a copy of Jackabolin, or not Jackabolin, but like 2 copies of your Skull Servants on your side of the field, and then you have a copy of a Unizombie on your side of the field, and you can boost it up. This card's really easy to go into. It's not hard at all, especially if you have like a copy of, say, for example, level 4 plus your Unizombie that's been boosted up into a level 4 plus a Skull Servant, it's really easy to go into this card. And overall, just an amazing card to just rip 3 cards. Cyframe Lord Omega, it is a zombie deck, so this card's ridiculously easy to go into, and you need to go into it sometimes to bring your Skull Servants back and rip cards out of your opponent's hand. Black Rose Dragon, because it can board wipe. This card's really easy to go into. The White Princess and a copy of Unizombie boosted up to level 4 goes into this. Brionic is really, really easy to go into in this deck, and it just rips cards off your opponent's side of the field. You go into this by having a level 5 Unizombie and any one Skull Servant on your side of the field. It's really easy to go into. And then Chimbara you can go into as well. It helps you OTK a little bit. And overall, it's a really good card to be able to go into in this deck. I love going into Chambara because you can just attack twice with this card and be able to boost it up by 200. It's really good in this deck, and I like it as a one-of as well. And it's easy to go into this by boosting up your Unizombie to a level 4 and then using any Skull Servant to go into this. We then play an Access Code Talker just to be able to pop cards, Nightmare Unicorn to be able to spin stuff, Phoenix to pop spells and traps. You play a small Vampire package, which is the single copy of Vampire Sucker, because sometimes you do need the suck, and it's a zombie deck, so this card's really good in the deck as well. You want to play this as at least a one-of. Avenged Savior, I go into this arguably more than my Vampire Sucker, because what this card does is really good. It helps you Foolish Burial cards, because during your during damage calculation, if this card battles an opponent's monster, you can quick effect send a zombie from your deck to the graveyard, and if you do, the opponent's monster loses attack equal to the level of the monster that was sent to the graveyard times 200. So if you send something like a White Prince, it's only going to go down by 200, but if you send something like a Jack of Olin, it's going to go down by 1400, which is really helpful. We play a single copy of Union Carrier because it can help you put cards on other cards, like for example, you can equip a copy of White Prince to a copy of like a Skull Servant on your side of the field and then link them away for link 1. And then the White Prince will touch the grave, which will then send 2 copies of a Skull Servant or a copy of a Skull Servant and a copy of Lady in White to the graveyard, which will boost up your Skull Servants by 3,000 and essentially give you a play to summon out your copy of King of the Skull Servant from your deck. It's kind of a weird play, but it comes up every so often. 1 copy of Link Rebo, because it is a Link 1, and it's really easy to summon in this deck. Relinquished Anima, same thing, really easy to summon in this deck, and gobbling up monsters is really good. And then a single copy of Alamirage, because all of your monsters, when they're summoned, are less than 1,000, so this card's really easy to go off with, and I love playing Alamirage in this deck. When you normal summon out a copy of White Prince, you can just link it away for Alamirage, and then go off. I mean, you have so many plays from there, it's ridiculous. So, that's it for the deck, guys. I hope you did enjoy it. It's actually, I would have to say, one of the more budget decks on the entire channel. It's not super expensive because the Skull Servant cards are really commons, like everything is common. And the majority of the stuff is probably going to run you like 10-15 cents, everything in the deck, except a couple of cards like Ash Blossom, which you can change out if you want to make it really budget. And maybe your copies of, say, actually you can change it out for Dark Ruler No More, which is getting reprinted in the Charmer structure deck when that comes out. And you can change that out and make it really budget. And then maybe your copies of some of your zombie cards might be a little bit expensive. But other than that, the deck is really budget. So anyways, guys, this is DarkArmedDuelist. Don't forget to like, comment, subscribe. Hit the bell on your screen, comment part notification squad. And definitely check out the Patreon. It really helps out the channel. And thank you so much, guys. I hope you enjoyed this one. And don't forget to like, comment, subscribe. And we'll see you guys in the next video. See you later, guys.